The first thing I learned about my second life was that whoever had owned my body before me had terrible friends. I learned that while hanging 4 stories above a stone courtyard by 3 fingers. My right shoe was gone. My left knee was scraping against the outside wall of the dormitory, and through the locked window above me, 3 boys were laughing hard enough that one of them had to lean against the glass. 5 seconds earlier, as far as I remembered, I had been 31 years old, walking across Avenue de Corrientes after finishing a late shift at a rehabilitation clinic in Buenos Aires. Then headlights. A horn. Nothing. Now I was 17, my arms felt like cooked pasta, and someone inside the room was saying, "Come on, Rivas. Scholarship students are supposed to work for what they get." That name did something strange to my head. Mateo Rivas. 17. San Martin Andean Academy. Mendoza Province. Scholarship student. Grade 2 Earth Root. Puma Blood purity, 2.8%. One disciplinary strike away from losing everything. Memories that weren't mine crashed into place so quickly I nearly forgot the more immediate issue of gravity. The original Mateo had been ordered to climb outside the 4th-floor dormitory window and retrieve a school banner caught on a drainage bracket. The boys had promised to hold the window open. They had lied. Again, apparently. I looked down. Bad idea. The courtyard seemed considerably farther away than the 4 floors promised. Then something appeared in front of my eyes. Not a glowing sword. Not a dragon. Not even a helpful message saying, "Congratulations on your transmigration." One translucent word floated against the stone. Observe. I almost laughed, which would have been a terrible use of oxygen. I focused on the wall because there wasn't much else available. The word vanished. A second message appeared. Opportunity detected. Fractured drainage seam 17 centimeters left. Iron support beneath plaster. Estimated load tolerance, 112 kilograms. I stared. Then I moved my left hand 17 centimeters. My fingers found a narrow crack. Something solid waited inside it. I hooked my hand around the hidden iron support and stopped dying. That seemed like a strong first review for the system. I climbed sideways, found another opportunity when Observe showed me an unused maintenance ledge, and dropped onto a narrow balcony 1 floor below. By the time I walked back into the dormitory through the stairwell, the 3 boys had stopped laughing. The tallest one, Nico Ferreira, looked disappointed rather than guilty. "You were supposed to bring the banner." I looked at the banner still hanging outside. Then at him. I got distracted by not falling. He blinked. Apparently, the previous Mateo had not been sarcastic. That made 2 of us who were having an educational evening. I also discovered something else. Observe was not free. A sharp ache pulsed behind my eyes, like I had spent 6 hours reading tiny print under fluorescent lights. When I tried using it on Nico, another message appeared. Opportunity detected. Elevated right shoulder during aggressive posture, likely habitual imbalance. Then the headache doubled. Not exactly mind reading. More like reality handing me a sticky note. Interesting. I went to bed without arguing. The original Mateo's memories continued settling while I lay awake. This Argentina looked almost exactly like the country I knew. There were buses, football clubs, phones, supermarkets, government ministries, bad cafeteria coffee, and arguments about whether Buenos Aires counted as the entire country. There was also cultivation. Spiritual energy accumulated along geological structures, particularly mountains, mineral basins, rivers, and old fault systems. People with spiritual roots could absorb that energy and strengthen their bodies. Blood powers were inherited supernatural traits descending from ancient beast lineages. San Martin Academy was one of Argentina's elite cultivation boarding schools. Its graduates became military cultivators, expedition specialists, healers, formation engineers, national team fighters, or employees of companies that paid salaries my previous self would have considered offensive in a positive way. And this Mateo was about to lose his only access to any of it. His mother, Elena, worked in a pharmacy in San Rafael. His younger brother, Leo, was 11. His father had died 3 years earlier. The academy scholarship covered tuition, housing, meals, cultivation resources, books, and a small monthly family stipend. Losing it would not merely embarrass me. It would remove 43% of the household income Elena currently depended upon. I found the scholarship conditions on my phone. I needed to remain within the upper 40% academically and competitively. There were 156 students in my year. My current rank was 143. Reassessment was in 42 days. I had inherited a body that cultivated slowly, possessed almost useless blood power, and had spent 2 years letting stronger students borrow his time, because saying no usually created problems he couldn't afford. The top student in our year was Tomas Ibarra. Grade 8 Windroot. 46% Condor blood. 8th breath stage. Captain of the Academy's senior student expedition team. The original Mateo had feared him more than any teacher. Tomas rarely insulted him. That would have required considering him worth insulting. He simply assigned Mateo unpleasant tasks because Mateo was useful and replaceable. Carry this equipment. Give up that training slot. Take notes for the expedition team. Clean the formation plates. Scout the low-value route. The world had explained to the original Mateo that talent determined value. Eventually, he had believed it. I didn't. My previous life had cured me of that long before the car cured me of being alive. I had spent 9 years working with athletes and injured patients. Some had extraordinary genetics. Some didn't. But I had seen talented people train stupidly and average people progress because they understood recovery, mechanics, consistency, and efficiency. Talent mattered. It just wasn't the same thing as destiny. At 6 the next morning, I stood in front of the dormitory mirror and examined my new face. Black hair, brown eyes, lean build, 17 years old, 2 little sleep, 1 missing shoe. I activated Observe on myself. The headache returned immediately. Opportunity detected. Spiritual circulation leakage during lower body compression. Estimated loss, 38%. I smiled. The original Mateo had spent years believing his body was defective. Maybe it was. But 38% wasn't destiny. 38% was a technical problem. And technical problems were the closest thing I had ever had to a religion. San Martin's morning cultivation class began at 7. Our instructor, Maestro Benitez, had everyone sit cross-legged on polished stone, while spirit lamps released controlled earth and wind energy into the room. The academy taught a basic circulation pattern called the 12-breath cycle. Inhale spiritual energy. Guide it down the central channel. Separate it through the limbs. Return it toward the core. Repeat. Simple in theory. The original Mateo had practiced it for 5 years. He was terrible at it. I lasted 6 minutes before understanding why. His breathing rhythm was synchronized to the academy count rather than his own body. Everyone inhaled for 4 seconds, held for 2, exhaled for 4. That worked fine if your spiritual channels responded at the expected speed. Mine didn't. A grade 2 earth root was slow. By the time spiritual energy reached my lower channels, the class rhythm was already telling me to exhale. I was interrupting my own circulation every single cycle. It was like forcing every runner to use the same stride length, because measuring individual legs sounded inconvenient. I used to observe. Opportunity detected. Extend first inhalation by 1.3 seconds. Delay pelvic channel compression by 0.6 seconds. My skull immediately informed me I had perhaps 3 or 4 uses left today. I adjusted quietly. The difference was small, then enormous. For the first time in the body's memory, one complete cycle closed without spiritual energy spilling away. Warmth spread through my abdomen. I completed another, then another. By the end of class, I had absorbed roughly the same amount of energy Mateo normally collected in 3 sessions. Still pathetic compared with everyone else, but not pathetic for me. Benitez walked behind the rows with his hands folded. He paused. Rivas. Every old memory in the body tried to straighten nervously. Yes, maestro. Your circulation changed. I considered lying. I had survived exactly 12 hours in this world. Perhaps mystery was premature. I slowed the cycle. You altered the academy method. I altered my breathing. His expression suggested these were not meaningfully different things. A few students nearby laughed. Benitez placed 2 fingers against my shoulder channel, then frowned. Again. I circulated. His fingers remained there. His frown deepened. You're retaining more. That ended the laughter. Not dramatically. Nobody gasped. One student stopped tying his shoe. That was enough. After class, Nico Ferreira caught me outside. New trick. Breathing. You've discovered breathing. Late start. He didn't know whether I was mocking myself or him. Neither did I, really. I spent my second observed use of the day on the cultivation hall after everyone left. Opportunity detected. Residual earth energy beneath floor channels. Concentration below academy recovery threshold. Estimated persistence, 31 minutes. Below academy recovery threshold. That phrase interested me. High-grade roots absorbed energy quickly, but there was apparently a minimum concentration where their channels stopped drawing it efficiently. Mine did not have that problem. I sat back down. The room looked empty. It wasn't. For 27 minutes, I absorbed what everyone else had left behind. Not much. But again, not much was more than nothing. That afternoon, I visited the equipment disposal room. Vale Paz was there arguing with a broken formation heater. I remembered her. Valentina Paz. 17. Cultivation engineering track. Grade 4 metal root. No significant beast blood. Dark curls tied behind her head with a red band she regularly lost and accused other people of stealing. Her father worked maintenance at the academy. The original Mateo occasionally helped her move equipment because, unlike Tomas's group, Vale usually returned favors. She looked up. Why are you wearing 2 different shoes? I experienced a disagreement with architecture. She stared at me for 3 seconds. Did Nico lock you outside again? That sounds extremely specific. So yes. She put down a copper tool. Why didn't you report him? I shrugged. Old Mateo's reason came automatically. Because Nico's father donated to the athletics program. Because one more complaint would make me look troublesome. Because scholarship students were supposed to be grateful. Because Mateo had learned that sometimes defending yourself cost more than enduring something. But those were his reasons. Mine were simpler. I've got 41 days to keep my scholarship. I don't want to spend them fighting somebody else's father. Vale's expression changed slightly. Then she pointed at a bin beside the wall. If you've come for equipment, everything there is dead. I looked inside. Low-grade spirit stones. Cracked plates. Old copper wire. 3 ceramic conduit rings. Dead. Below 5% charge. Regulations say they're not worth recycling individually. I activated Observe. Opportunity detected. 19 spirit stones contain combined residual charge equivalent to 0.84 standard stone. My headache pulsed. I smiled. Vale saw it. No. What? I know that expression. You've known this face for 2 years. I've had this expression for maybe 12 hours. She stared harder. I had forgotten that people noticed personality changes. I reached into the bin. Can I have these? Why? Sentimental attachment to garbage. She laughed once. Take whatever you want. If anyone asks, I never saw you. That night, I arranged 19 nearly empty spirit stones around my bed. Individually, each produced too little energy for a proper cultivation session. Together, they leaked enough. The problem was distribution. If I simply placed them in a circle, the strongest stones interfered with the weakest. I used my final Observe activation. Opportunity detected. Uneven resonance. Rotating positions every 11 minutes may increase net absorption efficiency by 23%. May. Observe apparently believed in disclaimers. I spent 2 hours moving stones manually. It was ridiculous. It also worked. By midnight, my core felt hotter and denser than it had that morning. My phone showed a message from my mother. How was school? Leo says you promised to call Sunday. Don't forget. The original Mateo's chest tightened inside mine. That emotion didn't belong entirely to me, which was becoming difficult to think about. I had inherited his memories, his family, his fear, even his embarrassment. But I didn't know whether that made them mine. I typed back. School is fine. Tell Leo I haven't forgotten. Then another message arrived. From Tomas Ibera. Mountain conditioning tomorrow, 5:30. Bring 6 weighted packs for the team. No, please. No question. The original Mateo would have obeyed. I looked at the 19 dead spirit stones around my bed. Garbage. Worthless because important people had decided the remaining amounts were too small to matter. I typed one word. No. Tomas replied 30 seconds later. Excuse me. I smiled at the screen. Apparently, my second life had officially begun. Tomas found me before breakfast. He wasn't physically enormous. He didn't need to be. Some people carried status the way others carried weapons. Students moved slightly aside when Tomas walked through the dining hall, because they had spent years learning that his path was probably more important than theirs. He sat across from me without asking. Why didn't you bring the packs? I continued eating media lunas. Because you asked me at 10:43 last night to wake at 5, collect 6 packs, and deliver them for a training session I wasn't attending. I didn't ask. I noticed. His eyes narrowed. Tomas was handsome in the expensive, disciplined way that made school brochures nervous with excitement. You're assigned support rotation. No, support rotation ended last month. You've always helped the expedition group. There it was. Not cruelty. Assumption. The original Mateo had done favors so consistently, they had become obligations without anyone needing to announce the transition. I won't anymore. Tomas leaned back. Your reassessment is next month. I know. The expedition recommendation adds 20 ranking points. I know. And you're currently 143rd. Also know that. Then I'm trying to understand why you've decided to make your situation worse. That irritated me more than an insult would have. Because part of him genuinely thought he was helping. I lose training time carrying your equipment. You gain association with the strongest team. I can't absorb association. You absorb opportunities. I almost laughed. If he only knew. Instead, I finished my coffee. Then I'll find different opportunities. He studied me for several seconds. You're acting strangely. Near-death experience. What? Nothing. He stood. Your choice. That was all. No threat. No dramatic promise to destroy me. Tomas didn't need to punish people who made inefficient decisions. He simply let them fail. I respected that. It made beating his assumptions considerably more interesting. My first major experiment came 3 days later. Observe had shown me that my Puma Blood activated inefficiently during full-body use. Puma Blood was respected because high-purity users could generate brief explosions of speed. The Academy method told us to flood blood power through the entire body before movement. At 2.8% purity, that gave me approximately 4 useful seconds before exhaustion. My previous life's training experience suggested another approach. Movement didn't require every muscle to produce maximum force simultaneously. Acceleration was sequential. Foot, ankle, calf, hip, core, shoulder if striking. I practiced behind the old gym, where nobody trained because the floor tilted slightly toward a drainage ditch. First attempt, I activated Puma Blood only in my right calf. I fell sideways. Second attempt, ankle and calf. I overextended and rolled through a flower bed. Third attempt, hip timing. I crashed into a bench. Observe informed me of several opportunities during these experiments, none of which included preserving dignity. By the 6th day, I could trigger blood power in pulses shorter than half a second. Vale found me sprinting between 2 trees. She watched 3 runs. Then said, "You're cheating." With my own blood. With physics. Physics is available to everyone. Not the way you're using it. I explained the kinetic chain. She listened because engineering students apparently considered the human body a badly documented machine. Then she adjusted my stance by 3 centimeters and immediately improved my launch. That annoyed me. Don't smile. I didn't. You're smiling internally. Very loudly. We kept working. Vale built a crude timing plate using discarded formation sensors. I called the method Puma Pulse. She called it cat flicking. We compromised by never letting her name anything important. Within 10 days, my 100-meter training time dropped from 13.8 seconds to 10.6 without increasing my actual cultivation rank. Then I broke through to 3rd breath. 2 days later, 4th. The progression wasn't magic from nowhere. I was simply stacking efficiencies. Customized breathing. Residual training hall energy. Dead spirit stones. Puma pulse. Sleep scheduling. Recovery periods. The original Mateo trained 12 hours some days because he was terrified of falling behind. I trained 7 and recovered properly. His body responded like it had been waiting years for someone to stop punishing it. My ranking assessment practice changed next. San Martin used a pressure corridor cut into the hillside. Students crossed 30 meters, while formation plates simulated increasing mountain force. The record for our year was Tomas at 19.4 seconds. My old time was 48.7. When my turn came, Nico shouted, "Try not to die this time." I almost appreciated the continuity. The first 10 meters were horrible. At 15, something clicked. Everyone else leaned forward and resisted the pressure. Observe had previously shown me shifting force patterns along the floor. So instead of resisting, I changed my step angle. The pressure pushing against my chest became pressure, moving past my hip. I wasn't stronger than the corridor. I was simply arguing less. Puma pulse fired through my legs. I crossed in 21.8 seconds. Silence. Not crowd gasp silence. More like collective recalculation. Benitez checked the timer. Then checked it again. Tomas stood near the wall, arms folded. For the first time, I saw him look at me as if I had become mathematically inconvenient. Afterward he approached. "How? Technique. What technique?" "Mind. You developed a movement art." "Developed is generous. I'm still bruised from the bench." He ignored that. "Join my Cordillera team." That surprised me. Not because he offered. Because of how quickly he adapted. Tomas wasn't stupid enough to keep calling me worthless once evidence changed. "You get full expedition credit," he continued. "Access to better resources. I can arrange additional training time." "And what do you get?" "You identify whatever you're doing differently. We incorporate it." There it was. The same worldview, wearing better clothes. I discover value. He allocates it. No. His jaw tightened. "Mateo, this academy exists because resources are limited. Talent needs concentration." "And who decides what's talent?" "The results do." I looked toward the pressure corridor. "Then keep watching." I walked away before he could answer. Vale caught up outside. "You know, irritating the best cultivator in our year, while ranked 112, is an interesting survival strategy." 112. She held up her tablet. My practice ranking had updated. I had climbed 31 places. She grinned. "Congratulations, you're now merely bad." I laughed. For the first time since waking in this body, the future felt less like something chasing me. It felt like something I might catch. The academy grounds were older than the academy. That fact became important because I got lost. I wish I had a more heroic explanation. San Martin covered nearly 80 hectares beneath the Andes, with modern dormitories built around older stone halls, training terraces, water channels, retaining walls, and sealed foundations. One morning, I took the wrong path behind the engineering workshops and ended up beside an abandoned eastern wall. My earth root reacted immediately. Warmth moved through my feet. I activated Observe. Opportunity detected. Natural meridian compression beneath retaining structure. Peak convergence expected between 5:41 and 5:53 a.m. It was 5:47. I sat down. 12 minutes later, I understood why high-grade cultivators ignored places like this. The energy was terrible. Thin. Uneven. Jerking through my channels in pulses. A grade 8 root probably couldn't capture it efficiently. My grade 2 root didn't care. Slow had one advantage. Once energy entered, it stayed. I returned the next morning. And the morning after that. Vale eventually followed, because she had developed the disturbing habit of assuming anything I did before sunrise probably involved academy infrastructure. She scanned the wall. "This shouldn't be active." "Why?" The modern energy survey marks this section dead. Maybe the survey is measuring the wrong thing. She looked offended on behalf of measurement. That afternoon, she pulled historical plans. The eastern wall predated San Martin by at least 170 years. Older records claimed it followed ceremonial orientation used by 19th-century mountain cultivators. Vale brought me to 4 other old structures. Each one sat over a weak meridian convergence. I used to observe carefully. Same pattern, different timing. The old builders had known something modern cultivation had forgotten. That discovery changed my growth again. I built a schedule. 541 Eastern Wall. 617 Irrigation Channel. After advanced classes, Training Hall 7. Late evening, Old Furnace Room. Each opportunity was individually mediocre. Combined, they gave me 4 cultivation environments per day without paying a single credit. I reached 5th breath. Then 6th. My scholarship ranking climbed to 78. Then 56. By week 4, I entered the upper 40%. I should have relaxed. Instead, I became greedy. Not for money, for efficiency. Observe showed opportunities everywhere. A cracked formation plate generated a stable harmonic for 7 seconds every time it restarted. A cafeteria mineral filter accumulated tiny earth essence overnight. An unused tunnel beneath the athletics building retained pressure after combat classes. I started carrying empty cloth bags because I kept finding spirit fragments people discarded. Vale called me the Trash Emperor. The name spread. One afternoon, I walked into class and found 3 dead spirit stones placed ceremonially on my desk. Nico bowed. An offering, Your Majesty. I pocketed them. Accepted. That joke stopped being funny for everyone else when my cultivation hit 7th breath. Then 8th. Tomas was also 8th. He challenged me during combat application class. Not formally. Benitez paired students for controlled sparring. Tomas crossed the room before anyone else could volunteer. I want Rivas. Benitez raised an eyebrow. Why? Because ranking should reflect reality. I couldn't disagree with that. The match began. Condor Blood changed movement differently from Puma Blood. Tomas didn't simply become faster. His body became lighter during direction changes, allowing absurd aerial control. Wind root energy wrapped his limbs. The original Mateo's memories screamed that Tomas was untouchable. My own eyes disagreed. Tomas attacked. I used to observe. Opportunity detected. 6-degree opening beneath left wind spiral during reorientation. I moved. His strike passed my shoulder. Puma pulse. 2 steps. I touched his ribs. Point. We reset. He attacked differently. Good. He had noticed. Second exchange lasted 12 seconds. Third lasted 24. He won 2. I won 3. Then Tomas stopped trying to prove superiority and started studying me. That made him more dangerous. He began deliberately changing rhythm. My observed limit couldn't keep up. By the 8th exchange, my headache became severe. He caught me with a shoulder strike that sent me sliding across the mat. I lost, and I was delighted, because I finally understood the limitation. Observe could find opportunities, but if I depended on it every second, I became stupid between activations. So I spent the next week training without it. I forced myself to recognize the kinds of things Observe had been teaching me. Weight shifts, breathing changes, formation pulses, muscular tension, energy leakage. Observe was not supposed to replace observation. It was teaching me where to look. That realization mattered more than another cultivation stage. My next spar with Tomas happened 11 days later. He activated Condor Blood. I didn't activate Observe. I watched. 3 exchanges. 5. 7. Then I saw it. His left shoulder rose before every high-speed directional break. The same kind of habitual imbalance Observe had shown me in Nico on my first night. I waited. Tomas stepped. Wind gathered. I entered before the technique finished. One hand touched his wrist. The other stopped 2 centimeters from his chest. Benitez called the match. Tomas stared at my hand, then at me. Something in his expression changed. Not anger. Distance. He finally understood that we were no longer climbing the same staircase. After class, he caught me outside. The Cordillera Passage selection is next week. I know. You're applying. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then we're going to have a problem. Why? Because there's one senior expedition leadership slot. I smiled. There it is. What? Our first normal rivalry. For the first time, Tomas almost smiled back. Then he said, "Don't expect me to lose because your story became interesting." Fair enough. I didn't. The Cordillera Passage was San Martin's pride. A 68-kilometer cultivation route climbed through restricted Andean territory west of the academy. Students trained there under supervision, crossing pressure fields, old stone markers, mineral valleys, and formation checkpoints. Completing the full route before graduation practically guaranteed recruitment by national cultivation programs. Tomas had dreamed of setting the student record since he was 12. I wanted something different. The old maps bothered me. Vale had shown me them 3 nights before selection. Several portions of the passage made no engineering sense. The official route curved around a 12-kilometer ravine called the Dead Fold, because surveys detected almost no usable spiritual energy there. But the oldest stone structures pointed toward it, not away. And every time I stood near western sections of campus, my earth route pulled faintly in that direction. During final selection trials, I finished second behind Tomas in overall scoring. That placed both of us on the expedition. Tomas remained captain. For once, I didn't object. He had more experience leading people. I had more experience almost falling off buildings. Different qualifications. Vale joined as junior formation technician. Nico made the support team and complained that fate was punishing him by assigning him to carry packs. I told him personal growth was beautiful. 3 days later, 18 students and 4 instructors entered the mountains. The first day was normal. Beautiful, exhausting, cold. The Andes in this world looked like the Andes I remembered, except certain slopes shimmered faintly at sunrise where spiritual pressure condensed. We crossed hanging bridges reinforced with formation cables and slept in a stone shelter built into the mountain. On the second morning, I activated Observe on one of the ancient route markers. Opportunity detected, dormant resonance pointing southwest, current alignment incomplete. Southwest was the Dead Fold. I told Vale. She checked the marker manually. Then another. Then another. They're directional. I know. No, I mean they were built as a network. These aren't trail markers. What are they? I don't know. That answer excited her more than certainty would have. By afternoon, the mountain pressure increased unexpectedly. The instructor leading us, Maestro Duarte, ordered reduced formation output. Tomas disagreed. There are 6 students from the northern team ahead of us. Duarte checked the communication plate. The signal flickered. Tomas was right. Another student team had entered a narrow upper section before the pressure shift. If we withdrew immediately, they could become stranded. Tomas proposed boosting the passage stabilization formation long enough to bring them through. Normally, that was the correct response. I used observe on the formation. Opportunity detected. Temporary stabilization possible through 18% output increase. Then another line appeared. Secondary consequence uncertain. Local structure operating outside original orientation. That worried me. Tomas. He was already organizing spirit stone replacements. The formation wasn't designed for this alignment. He looked at me. Can you prove that? No. Can you offer another route to those students? I looked toward the dead fold. Maybe. Not enough. Tomas made his decision. Then we stabilize. And here was the uncomfortable thing. He wasn't being arrogant. He was trying to protect people. Duarte hesitated, then approved. They increased output. The mountain answered. A vibration passed through the stone beneath my feet. Every old marker along the route lit at once. Not brightly. Deeply. My earth root felt it like a second heartbeat. Observe activated almost instinctively. Opportunity detected. Dormant network response. Direction dead fold. Window before overload, 47 minutes. Vale saw my face. What? We've been using the wrong road. That sounded ridiculous even to me. We ran. Duarte shouted after us. Tomas followed furious. The official trail ended at the ravine. Beyond it, the dead fold looked exactly as advertised. Gray rock. Sparse brush. No visible spiritual mist. Nothing. My earth root almost dragged me forward. We descended. Vale found the first structure after 9 minutes. Not a ruin. A wall. Buried beneath scree. Too smooth to be natural. The exposed portion was 6 meters tall and continued downward. Tomas stared. That isn't Argentine construction. Excellent historical analysis, Vale said. We followed the wall until we found a circular depression. At its center stood a stone disc covered in symbols. The mountain vibration intensified. I touched it. Observe exploded across my vision. Opportunity detected. Compatible interface condition. Slow earth retention. Required stabilization. Continuous absorption across unstable input. Risk severe spiritual overload. For once, observe sounded less like a helpful note and more like a legal waiver. Vale grabbed my arm. Don't. Behind us, the passage formations began failing. We could see flashes of light along the upper route. The stranded students were still there. I thought about my mother. Leo. 42 days ago, I had been worried about a scholarship. Now I was considering touching an ancient mountain machine, because a transparent word suggested I was unusually compatible with terrible decisions. Reasonable progression. I placed both hands on the disc. Energy entered me. Not cultivation energy. Not exactly. Pressure. The entire mountain seemed to inhale through my bones. My channels filled instantly. 8th breath shattered. 9th opened for perhaps 3 seconds before something deeper broke beneath it. Every lesson I knew became inadequate. I heard Vale shouting. Tomas was holding my shoulders, trying to keep me upright. Then the stone beneath us moved. The ravine split along perfectly straight lines. A massive structure rose from inside the mountain. Black stone, metal ribs, circular rings wider than buildings. Ancient lights ignited beneath centuries of dust. The passage stabilization network snapped into alignment. Pressure vanished from the root above us, and a voice spoke from somewhere beneath the earth. Not Spanish, not any language I consciously knew. Yet somehow the meaning reached me. Meridian Station 47 South. Regional shelter connection restored. I fell to my knees. Vale knelt beside me. Tomas stared at the structure. Then a wall of light appeared. It showed a map. Argentina, South America, Earth. Then hundreds of lines extending outward into darkness. My entire understanding of the world lasted approximately 4 seconds longer. For nearly 200 years, Argentine cultivation textbooks had taught that the highest stable human realm was the crown stage. There were 9 breath stages. Then foundation, core, crown. Argentina had fewer than 30 confirmed crown cultivators. The headmaster of San Martin was one. Tomas's grandfather was another. They were people national governments negotiated around. Meridian Station 47 South disagreed with our curriculum. According to the station's surviving classification system, crown stage translated roughly to something called third foundation. Not third highest, third foundational category. Vale read the translation panel 3 times. Then she sat down. Tomas remained standing because apparently emotional collapse required scheduling. I was still trying to understand what had happened to me. The station had used my body as a stabilizing sink. My slow earth root had absorbed turbulence that stronger roots would have rejected violently. I had gone from 8th breath to something above the Academy's foundation benchmark in less than 6 minutes. It should have destroyed me. Instead, years of high-retention cultivation had conditioned my channels to hold energy efficiently. Every piece of garbage, every weak meridian pocket, every residue session, all of it had prepared my body for exactly the kind of pressure everyone else trained to avoid. When we returned to the academy, subtlety lasted 11 minutes. The passage network had recorded everything. So had the instructors. So had 18 students. Within 2 days, Argentina's National Cultivation Directorate sent representatives. Within 3, the Academy suspended all Western expeditions. Within 4, my reassessment crystal broke. Not cracked. Broke. I placed my hand on it. The crystal flashed white, displayed the maximum foundation reading, then emitted a noise like a microwave losing an argument and went dark. Vale laughed for nearly a minute. I didn't. Mostly because the replacement crystal cost more than my mother's apartment. Tomas stood beside me. I spent 12 years trying to become the strongest student San Martin ever produced. I looked at the broken device. Sorry. No, you're not. Not especially. He exhaled. Then said I was wrong about you. That was less satisfying than I expected. Maybe because I had imagined the original Mateo hearing those words. Not me. The Academy reviewed expedition records after the station discovery. Once people began examining Tomas's resource decisions, other things surfaced. Scholarship students had repeatedly been assigned support work beyond required rotation. Low-ranked students lost training allocations to expedition prospects. Nothing Tomas had done was illegal. That was almost the point. He had built an efficient system around the assumption that resources belonged where existing measurements predicted the highest returns. The Academy Council removed him as student expedition captain pending reform of allocation policy. Several students expected me to celebrate. I didn't. Tomas had been wrong, sometimes badly, but in the mountains, he had risked himself to save 6 students. People were inconvenient like that. I found him alone, outside the training hall the evening after the decision. "You okay?" He looked at me. "Is this the part where you're magnanimous?" "No, I'm terrible at that." "Good." He stared toward the mountains. "I still think limited resources should go where they produce the most value." "I know. I just apparently had no idea how to measure value." That was the closest thing to an apology he could manage. For now, I accepted it. My actual revenge turned out not to be watching Tomas fall. It was realizing I no longer needed anything he controlled. That felt cleaner. It also lasted less than 24 hours before a woman walked out of the mountain and made all of us feel provincial. Her name was Marisol. At least that's how she translated it. She appeared at Meridian Station 47 wearing a dark traveling coat covered in thin silver lines. No dramatic arrival. No explosion. One moment, the central transit ring was empty. The next, she stood inside it holding a cracked metal device and looking annoyed. Headmaster Salas, 3 Crown cultivators, 6 government officials, and an entire security team surrounded her. Mara looked at them politely. Then at me. Her eyes narrowed. "You activated this station." I felt pressure from her presence. Not hostile pressure. Existence. Every powerful cultivator I had ever met felt like a storm. Mara felt like weather was something she carried folded in a pocket. Yes. With that root. I was beginning to dislike that question. Apparently. She examined me for several seconds. Then smiled. Interesting. I had recently become one of the strongest students in San Martin history. Possibly one of the strongest 17-year-olds in Argentina. Mara treated that information roughly the way a football coach might react to a child announcing he had learned to tie his shoes. And strangely, I loved it. She explained the wider situation over the next 2 days. Earth had once been connected to the open meridian, a network of cultivated worlds, protected habitats, dimensional settlements, and transit regions built around naturally occurring spiritual pathways. Several centuries earlier, something called the meridian fracture damaged Earth's connections. Much of the planet became enclosed inside sheltered zones. Civilizations outside didn't abandon us exactly. Travel simply became dangerous. Most stations went dormant. Local cultivation systems continued developing with incomplete knowledge. Mara was a route specialist. Her work involved locating broken stations and restoring safe pathways. "What stage are you?" Tomas asked during one briefing. Mara considered the question. "Your translation system isn't useful enough." That answer irritated him beautifully. Then she tried repairing the station's Western Transit ring. For 14 hours. It kept failing. Vale eventually dragged me down there. "Your girlfriend needs help." "She's not my girlfriend." Mara. "Oh." Vale gave me a look I chose not to investigate. Mara had dismantled half the control assembly. "I know this architecture," she said. "The station should respond." I activated Observe. 1 use. Nothing. 2nd. Opportunity detected. Harmonic mismatch between regional Earth resonance and external root frequency. Local mineral adaptation required. I told Vale. Her eyes widened. Mara frowned. "That's impossible." Vale pointed toward Mendoza's mountain composition. "Not if the station spent centuries adapting to local geology." 4 hours later, Vale replaced 3 imported resonance plates with locally cut mineral conductors. The transit ring activated. Mara stared at the stable light. Then at me. Your ability told you that. I had never told outsiders about Observe. So I said, I noticed things. Vale coughed loudly. Mara smiled. Good, the open meridian has plenty of powerful people. She looked toward the functioning gate. People who notice the right thing are rarer. That sentence frightened me more than her strength. Because for the first time, the world outside the pond had noticed me back. I should probably claim I handled discovering the larger universe with humility. I did not. For approximately 2 weeks, I became unbearable. Not publicly. Publicly, I behaved reasonably. Privately, my brain had collected evidence that my methods worked and reached the extremely mature conclusion that therefore all my instincts were excellent. Observe didn't help. The station was full of opportunities. Ancient training chambers, damaged meridian channels, storage conduits containing residue stronger than San Martin's best cultivation rooms. Mara restricted access to most of them because activating forgotten interworld infrastructure without understanding it was, in her words, how entire regions become educational examples. I listened. Mostly. Vale noticed the mostly. You're doing the face. What face? The one before you. Interact with dangerous garbage. That's unfair. You built half your cultivation from dangerous garbage. Profitable garbage. Mateo. I had found something beneath the station. Observe had shown it 3 times. Opportunity detected. Dormant earth accumulation chamber. Compatibility exceptional. Projected cultivation benefit extreme. That word mattered. Observe almost never used adjectives. I told myself I would only inspect it. That sentence has probably preceded half of history's avoidable disasters. The chamber sat beneath the lowest accessible maintenance level. Its door opened when I touched it. Inside floated a sphere of compressed brown-gold light. No larger than a football. My earth root reacted so strongly I nearly fell forward. I should have called Mara. I should have called Vale. Instead, I thought about the open meridian. About Mara's effortless strength. About discovering that everything I had considered powerful was foundational outside. For the first time since arriving in this body, I felt weak again. I hated that feeling more than I realized. So I activated Observe. Opportunity detected. Direct absorption possible through low-grade earth retention structure. Risk, external network resonance may increase. May. There was the disclaimer. I touched the sphere. Power entered me. Not violently this time. Perfectly. My root absorbed it, as if my entire body had been designed for this one resource. Foundation deepened. My channels expanded. The station lights brightened. For 30 wonderful seconds, I felt stronger than I had ever imagined strength could feel. Then every alarm activated. Mara arrived first. Vale arrived second. Vale was angrier. What did you do? I absorbed. I can see that. Mara stared at the chamber, then closed her eyes. Her expression changed. We have a root surge. How bad? She opened her eyes. Approximately 8 hours before it reaches the regional network. Vale looked at me. What does that mean? Mara answered. The chamber Mateo activated wasn't a battery. Of course it wasn't. It was a pressure regulator. There are moments when the universe deserves permission to laugh. The regulator had been storing Earth-aligned energy from the broken open meridian connection for centuries. By emptying it, I had removed the buffer preventing external spiritual pressure from flowing directly into Mendoza's damaged network. A meridian tide was now moving toward the station. If it arrived uncontrolled, San Martin's formations would overload. Nearby cultivation infrastructure could fail. Weak cultivators might suffer spiritual shock. Ordinary people would probably survive, but thousands of buildings used low-level formation systems for heating, water pumping, medical equipment, transport, and communication. Power was not just power here. It was infrastructure. I had spent weeks learning that the world was larger than me, then demonstrated that I had not learned nearly enough. Vale didn't speak to me for 12 minutes. That was worse than yelling. Finally, she said, "Why didn't you tell me? I thought I could handle it." That wasn't my question. I had no answer. She laughed once without humor. "You keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Deciding that because you're the one taking the risk. Nobody else deserves a vote." "That isn't fair." "Isn't it?" She stepped closer. "You didn't tell me about the dormitory until after you almost fell. You didn't tell anyone every place you were training until I found you. You hid how much observe was exhausting you during sparring. Now you activated an interworld pressure chamber alone. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." "I know." "That made it worse. You think independence means nobody gets to stop you." The words landed harder than Tomas ever had. Mara quietly left the chamber. I wanted to argue. Instead, I remembered the original Mateo carrying other people's equipment because he had no power to say no. I had hated that helplessness so much that I'd built my entire second life around its opposite. Nobody would control my time, my training, my choices, my future. But Vale was right. Somewhere between freedom and strength, I had decided consultation felt suspiciously like permission. "I was wrong," I said. Vale folded her arms. "Yes. That was fast. I've had time to prepare." Despite everything, I laughed. Her expression softened for perhaps half a second. Then Mara returned. "There is one safe evacuation route through the transit ring." I understood immediately. She could take me out. The station recognized my resonance as the activation source. If the tide hit while I was gone, the automatic network might isolate the region around the station to protect the wider route. San Martin would take most of the damage. Mara looked at me. "You are strong enough to survive outside now." Vale went very still. There it was. The choice I had thought I wanted. Leave. Become stronger. Enter the real world. Nobody could stop me. I looked through the chamber doorway toward the mountain above us. Somewhere beyond it, 1,100 students were eating dinner. My mother was 200 kilometers south. Leo probably still thought I was going to call Sunday. Tomas was in the academy gym. Nico was probably finding more garbage to leave on my desk. None of them had chosen this. I had. "How do we stop the tide?" Mara hesitated. "You probably can't." I smiled without meaning to. That sounds like an observation. The meridian tide would reach us in 7 hours and 18 minutes. Mara's preferred solution required technology we didn't possess. San Martin's strongest formation could disperse perhaps 12% of the incoming pressure. Argentina's national network could contribute another 9. Not enough. The old me would have tried finding one miraculous solution. The current me finally understood why that was stupid. My entire cultivation path had been built from weak things. So I stopped looking for one strong answer. I started counting small ones. The Academy possessed 18,400 depleted spirit stones, awaiting industrial recycling. Each retained between 1 and 5% charge capacity. Vale understood immediately. You want to use them as sinks. Distributed sinks. They'll burn out. They only need to work once. We mapped every old structure on campus. Eastern retaining wall. Irrigation channels. Training hall foundations. Abandoned furnace. Athletics tunnel. All the places where I had cultivated from residue. They weren't random. They were surviving pieces of the original Meridian network. The old academy had unknowingly been built on top of a pressure distribution system. For weeks, I had been using its leaks. Now we would use the entire thing. Vale took control of the engineering teams. This was her world, not mine. And because I had finally learned something, I did not argue with her instructions once. Well, twice, but both times she was wrong about cable length. Tomas organized students. His old talent for resource allocation suddenly became useful when the goal changed from ranking people by value to putting them where their actual skills mattered. He assigned high-grade roots to stabilization points, low-grade earth roots to absorption channels, metal cultivators to conductor maintenance, wind cultivators to pressure venting. Nobody carried bags simply because they were low rank. I noticed. So did he. At midnight, we had installed 11,672 dead spirit stones. Nico dumped the final crate beside me. Your Majesty. I looked at the mountain of garbage. Today, you may call me that. Worthless rocks saving Argentina. I hate that your philosophy has evidence now. Garbage is free. Not anymore. The procurement office just locked the disposal warehouse. Even Vale laughed. The tide arrived at 1:43 in the morning. There was no giant monster. No enemy army. The stars simply changed. For several seconds, thin lines of gold appeared across the sky over the Andes. Then the mountain shook. Every formation at San Martin lit simultaneously. Pressure hit. The first distribution point failed in 9 seconds. Observe. Opportunity detected. Western channel overload. Redirect through irrigation line 4. I called it. Vale rerouted. Second failure. Observe. Third. By the 5th use, blood ran warm from my nose. Vale saw it. How many? 5. Stop. We have 19 channels left. Then start actually observing. She threw my own lesson back at me. Annoying. Useful. I closed the interface. Watched. The network was movement. Pressure followed patterns. Just like muscle. Just like breath. Just like Tomas's shoulder before a direction change. I began predicting failures before observe. Western plates brightening too quickly. Northern conduit vibrating off rhythm. Spirit stone sinks saturating in clusters. Puma pulse carried me across campus. I crossed distances that once required minutes in seconds. At one point, a barrier designed to stop combat cultivators blocked a maintenance path. I hit it without thinking. The barrier shattered. I stopped. A terrified first year stared at me. Sorry. Then I kept running. The tide intensified. Mara stood at the central station, ring controlling pressure levels no local cultivator could touch. Even she couldn't distribute everything. At 2:11, the Academy's main crown formation reached maximum load. Headmaster Salas ordered evacuation from 3 dormitories. At 2:16, 1,200 depleted spirit stones burned out simultaneously. The Western network collapsed. Pressure turned toward the central campus. Vale's voice came through my communicator. We lost West. I looked at the old map. West. Dead fold. The supposedly useless ravine. The buried station. The original builders had not designed San Martin as the center. Station 47 was. We had been pushing pressure away from the wrong place. Vale. No. I haven't even said it. I know your voice. We need to reverse the network. Silence. That would pull the tide toward you. Yes. Mateo. Mara said the station can survive higher pressure than the academy. The station, yes. Another silence. You are not the station. Fair. I activated Observe one final time. The world sharpened. Opportunity detected. Distributed absorption through registered activation anchor. That meant me. Risk unknown. Of course. I told Vale everything. No secret. No unilateral decision. Everything. Then I asked, can we do it? That was different. She knew it too. Her answer took 5 seconds. Yes. Not because I demanded. Because she chose. The network reversed. Pressure slammed toward Station 47. I stood in the central ring. Mara looked at me. If this exceeds your retention. I know. No, you don't. Fair again. Then the tide reached me. My grade 2 Earth root did what it had always done. Slowly. Stubbornly. It held. Energy entered through thousands of tiny roots. Dead stones. Old walls. Drainage channels. Broken formations. Everything nobody valued because each piece seemed too small. The pressure accumulated inside my body. Foundation cracked open. Something beyond it appeared. I understood none of the terminology. I didn't need to. My root didn't suddenly become grade 9. My Puma blood didn't awaken into some divine beast. I was still 2.8% Puma. Still grade 2 Earth. But efficiency compounds. 1% saved here. 3% there. 38% leakage removed. 80% blood waste eliminated. Hundreds of weak resources combined. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Power didn't have to arrive as one miracle. Sometimes power was what happened when nothing was wasted. The tide peaked. I raised one hand. The central station rings turned. Outside, according to Vale later, every light on the academy grounds became gold. The mountain stopped shaking. Then the pressure began falling. At 2:39 in the morning, Meridian Station 47 declared regional flow stable. I remained standing for another 6 seconds. Then I collapsed directly into a pile of worthless spirit stones. Nico later insisted this was symbolic. I told him to shut up. I woke 20 hours later in San Martin's medical wing. My mother was beside the bed. That was considerably more frightening than the Meridian tide. Mateo Rivas was 44 years old, 5'4", and possessed no cultivation worth mentioning. She could still make one look invalidate every supernatural advantage I had acquired. Hello, Mama. No. I considered alternative openings. Good morning. No. Vale sat in the corner pretending to read. Traitor. My mother leaned forward. You nearly destroyed a mountain. Technically, I helped prevent. No. Vale covered her mouth. I survived the conversation. Barely. Then Leo called, and asked whether I could now punch a train. I said probably not. Mara, who happened to be entering the room, said he probably could. My mother turned slowly toward me. I decided Mara was no longer my favorite outsider. The consequences spread for weeks. Nobody could hide Meridian Station 47. Argentina announced the discovery publicly, though the open Meridian details remained restricted. Cultivation schools across the country began reevaluating discarded resources and low-grade route training. Spiritstone waste prices increased by 600% in 10 days. Nico sent me the market chart with one message. You ruined garbage. San Martin rewrote scholarship labor rules. Support assignments became rotational and capped. Expedition resources were allocated through transparent performance categories rather than captain discretion. Tomas reapplied for leadership under the new system. He did not win. A grade 5 water route student named Sofia Luna beat him because her crisis management scores were better. Tomas congratulated her. I noticed that too. A week later, he found me at the rebuilt pressure corridor. I owe you an apology. I waited. I treated people as investments. That sounds like you. I thought that was fair because I applied the same standard to myself. That was probably true. He had always trained harder than anyone. If I wasn't producing value, he continued, I didn't think I deserved resources either. There was the part I had missed. Tomas's worldview had not only hurt weaker students. It had trapped him too. I don't forgive everything, I said. I didn't ask you to. Good. He nodded, then looked toward the corridor. Race. I stared at him. You understand this machine isn't rated for me anymore. I know. Then why? His expression finally became the closest thing Tomas Ibarra possessed to mischief. Because losing by an unreasonable amount may be educational. So we raced. I won by 11 seconds. He called that excessive. Vale called it hilarious. My scholarship reassessment happened 3 days later. Mostly because the academy administration had forgotten to cancel it. I sat in the same office where the original Mateo had once begged for 2 extra ranking points. Administrator Molina placed my file on the desk. Your spiritual root remains grade 2. Yes. Puma Blood purity remains 2.8%. Yes. Your cultivation stage cannot currently be classified using academy equipment. That seems inconvenient. She removed her glasses. The scholarship committee has concluded that you no longer meet scholarship requirements. I stared. Then she smiled. Because scholarship funding is intended for students who require financial assistance to access academy resources, the National Directorate has offered you a full independent cultivation grant worth 12 times the scholarship amount. I laughed. The original Mateo would have cried. Maybe part of me did. I called my mother immediately. The family stipend was replaced with enough funding that she could reduce her pharmacy hours if she wanted. She refused. Of course. Leo demanded new football boots. That request I approved. Vale received a national research contract to study Station 47's adapted infrastructure. She insisted on hearing her father as senior maintenance consultant. When one official questioned his formal qualifications, Vale asked how many of their formally qualified engineers had noticed the ancient station beneath their own academy. Her father got the job. Myra remained for another month. The restored transit route was still unstable, but narrow crossings became possible. One evening, she brought me into the central chamber. The wall displayed the open Meridian network. Thousands of points, dozens bright enough to represent major civilizations. Some moved. I chose not to ask why. Myra pointed toward one line leading away from Earth. There is a training settlement 2 crossings from here, entry-level by wider standards. How strong are the students? Stronger than most crown cultivators. I smiled. She noticed. You're excited. Should I not be? Most local prodigies become unhappy when they learn they're ordinary elsewhere. I'm not ordinary. She laughed. Not mocking. Approving. No, she said, that is becoming inconveniently clear. She offered me provisional explorer status. Not a student placement. Not yet. An explorer. Observe had value beyond combat. Broken routes. Unknown resources. Formation failures. Environmental hazards. Opportunities entire teams could overlook. The open meridian contained people who could flatten fortresses. It contained fewer people who could ask the right question before flattening one. I accepted, but not immediately. That mattered. I asked Vale first whether she wanted to come. Her certification would take 6 months. She said yes. Then she accused me of finally learning to consult people. I told her not to become sentimental. She threw a dead spirit stone at me. I caught it. Naturally. The night before my first crossing, I went back to the 4th floor dormitory. Nico had moved rooms months earlier. The old window was still there. So was the drainage bracket. The academy had installed a safety rail beneath it after my incident. Apparently, almost dying had finally produced infrastructure improvements. I opened the window and stepped onto the balcony. Mendoza glowed below. Beyond the academy, city lights spread across the dark valley. Behind them rose the Andes. 42 days after I woke hanging outside that window, I had thought San Martin was enormous. Its strongest students terrified the memories in my body. Its instructors seemed untouchable. Its rules could determine whether my family ate comfortably. Then I became strong enough that its ranking system couldn't measure me. For approximately 1 week, I thought that meant I had reached something important. Then a mountain opened. Now I knew San Martin was one academy built over one forgotten station, inside one sheltered region of one damaged world, connected to a civilization network larger than anything my old life had imagined. And the strange part was that none of my earlier victories felt smaller. Tomas had mattered. The scholarship had mattered. My mother's rent had mattered. Vale being angry with me had mattered. Finding 19 nearly dead spirit stones had mattered. The pond wasn't fake because an ocean existed. It had simply been where I learned to swim. My system appeared when I looked at the mountain. Observe. I hadn't used it in 3 days. My capacity had increased with cultivation, but I no longer activated it every time curiosity scratched at me. That was another kind of progress. Still, tonight seemed appropriate. I focused beyond the Andes. The system remained silent for several seconds. Then words appeared. Opportunity detected. Active open meridian route. Estimated accessible regions, unknown. Potential opportunities, unable to calculate. I laughed. For the first time, Observe itself seemed overwhelmed. Vale opened the dormitory door behind me. You're doing something dramatic without supervision. I'm standing. You've historically made that dangerous. Fair. She stepped beside me. Tomorrow she would remain at San Martin. I would cross with Mara for a 3-week expedition and return. In 6 months, if certification went well, Vale would begin joining selected routes. Neither of us said anything about how much might change before then. That silence contained enough. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yes." She looked surprised. "What?" "You usually pretend you're not. I've become emotionally sophisticated. You nearly destroyed Mendoza last month. Growth takes time." She smiled, then handed me something. One of the first spirit stones from the disposal bin. Completely empty now. She had drilled a small hole through it and attached it to a cord. "A souvenir. Of garbage. Your natural element." I put it around my neck. The next morning, nearly half the academy gathered near Station 47. I hated that. Crowds made departures feel like performances. Headmaster Salas gave me official documents. Administrator Molina reminded me that my independent grant required quarterly reports. My mother hugged me hard enough to test whether open meridian cultivation included rib reinforcement. Leo asked again about trains. Tomas shook my hand. Nico gave me a small bag. I opened it. 3 depleted spirit stones. "You never know," he said. I stared at him. "Garbage is expensive now. I stole these months ago." "That's strangely thoughtful. I want them back if they become legendary." Vale stood last. She looked at the transit ring. Then at me. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. If Mara offers you an ancient cosmic chamber, I ask first. If a system message says extreme opportunity, I ask first. If you find a broken artifact everyone thinks is useless. I hesitated. Vale pointed at me. "Mateo, I'll send you a picture." That is not what I said. Mara called from inside the ring. "Are you coming?" I stepped toward the light, then stopped. Not because I was afraid. Because I wanted to remember. San Martin Academy. The walls I had scavenged. The pressure corridor. The mountains. The people. The place where a grade 2 scholarship student had once believed his greatest ambition was remaining enrolled. Then I crossed. Open meridian transit did not feel like teleportation. It felt like stepping through the instant between 2 heartbeats. For one impossible moment, I saw darkness filled with lines. Worlds suspended along luminous routes. Structures moving through distances my mind could not measure. Then gravity returned. I stumbled onto black stone beneath a violet sky. The air contained so much spiritual energy that my old San Martin cultivation chamber would have looked empty by comparison. People moved through a vast settlement beyond the platform. Some flew. Nobody seemed impressed by that. A child carrying luggage had cultivation pressure comparable to Maestro Benitez. Mara watched my face. "Welcome to Ladera Crossing." I inhaled. My grade 2 root immediately began absorbing energy. Slowly, stubbornly, exactly as always. Then a transport pillar beside us flickered. 3 travelers ignored it. A maintenance cultivator walked past without noticing. Observe appeared automatically. Opportunity detected. Resonance leakage in lower junction. I started laughing. Mara raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing." I looked at a civilization where I was no longer the strongest person in sight. Then I looked at the broken pillar everyone had walked past. My root was still grade 2. My blood was still 2.8% Puma. I had crossed into a world where people stronger than Argentina's legends complained about luggage fees and missed transport connections. And somehow, the first thing waiting for me was another overlooked problem. That was when I finally understood what my power actually was. Observe had never promised to make me the strongest. It had given me something much more dangerous. As long as the universe kept wasting opportunities, I would never run out of ways to grow.